hard for and everything that I worked to build, the image that I worked so hard to build, was threatened.
She's lying. Everything that I said is 100% true.
Well, y'all was just, how'd it go?
I was special, you know? He came in and wanted to be special. So,
Yo.
Acting like y'all winning. Nigga get some money and have to do 5,000 shows. Hoe ass niggas.
Brandy has been one of the most carefully constructed images in R&B since she was a teenager. The braids, the Moesha era, the voice, the specific wholesome energy that made her the poster girl of an entire decade. All of it was deliberate. All of it was managed. And all of it is now sitting in a very uncomfortable position after Shyne and Mase sat down on a podcast and started telling stories about the 90s that Brandy apparently did not authorize anyone to tell.
No lies told. He was Shaq.
Okay.
He was the champion. He was the MVP.
Right.
I was Kobe, no pun intended, because they said Kobe was a special friend of Brandy's as well.
Right.
But no pun intended.
Right.
But I was coming out of high school on the championship team, and
right.
he was the superstar of the team.
Right.
Do you think she just doesn't want to be associated with you?
I don't know. I can't get in her mind. I'm just saying that she has lied to the public before to protect her image, and maybe the fact that she was seeing both Mace and I at the same time, she feels it's not good for her image.
The claim is straightforward, even if the situation is not. Mace and Brandy were together. He was, as Mace put it, special to her. Shyne came into Bad Boy Records, saw Brandy everywhere he looked from childhood, and made his move without knowing that Mace had already made his. The mutual friend who could not keep his mouth shut connected those dots eventually. Brandy called Shyne furious. And according to Shyne, the conversation she had with him in that moment, the one where she told him he was nobody, that he had not sold a single record, that she was Brandy and he needed to understand what that meant, was the specific humiliation that put the battery in his back to go make his first album. Brandy's response was to deny the relationship existed, to say it was a platonic friendship that was being mischaracterized.
What is wrong with her? I spoke from a place of admiration,
Right.
and a place of reminiscing on my experience with her, which I didn't care to highlight the negatives. It was only positive. And if she was to know Shyne, I got that.
Right.
So when I came up, she was in the crosshairs. Like I was sniping.
Right.
And I had no idea though, because he was special.
Right.
So he was running that playbook so discreetly, so quietly, I had no idea.
Yeah, he's sneaky.
To post a statement promoting her upcoming memoir and let that denial sit in the public record as her official account of events. And then Ray J got on social media and made the whole situation significantly worse in the specific way that only Ray J can.
Bend y'all niggas over, bro. Hit y'all from the back like this, nigga. Fuck punks. Where pussy acting like y'all winning? Nigga get some money and have to do 5,000 shows. Hoe ass niggas. Give you a venereal, nigga. Blood on everything.
To understand why this landed the way it landed, you have to understand what Brandy's image has been built around for the better part of 3 decades. She was not just a singer. She was a symbol. The 90s had a very specific architecture of black girl innocence and aspiration, and Brandy occupied the center of it. Moesha. The braids that a generation of girls asked their mothers to replicate. The music that moved between teenage vulnerability and grown woman longing in ways that felt genuine rather than calculated. She was the girl next door, and the girl you wanted to be, and the girl on your TV every week, and the voice on your stereo. And all of it added up to an image that was carefully protected because it was commercially and culturally valuable. That image required Brandy to be a specific kind of person, or at minimum to be perceived as a specific kind of person.
Brandy is now all grown up, 23. As you can see, she is grown, and we recently learned that she got married and is expecting a baby girl this summer.
Which is why when she got pregnant while unmarried, she went on Oprah and told the world she was married when she was not. The shame of that era, the real, structural, career-threatening shame of being a young black woman famous for a certain kind of innocence while being publicly pregnant outside of marriage, was enough that the lie felt necessary. She and her mother made a calculation, and the calculation produced a deception that she later had to go back to Oprah and confess.
Being pregnant out of wedlock was not a trend. It felt the pressure of having to be perfect. I thought that everything that I had worked hard for and everything that I worked to build, the image that I worked so hard to build, was threatened. having a child out of wedlock
Would ruin that.
ruin my career, everything that I built.
She said she felt the pressure of having to be perfect, that she thought her career and everything she had built was threatened, that the image had become something she was protecting even when protecting it required lying. Shyne brought that history up in his TMZ walk-by interview specifically because Brandy's denial of their relationship had effectively called him a liar. He was not going to sit with that characterization quietly. His point was not subtle. This is the same Brandy who lied to Oprah about being married. Her credibility on matters of image protection is documented. The idea that she would deny a romantic history that did not fit the persona she has always been selling is not a stretch for anyone who has been paying attention to how she operates. Mase confirmed the core of what Shyne was saying without adding drama to it.
Well, y'all was just, how'd it go?
I was special, you know? He came in and wanted to be special. So,
He was the established one, the running back, the MVP, the Shaq of the situation, as the metaphor on the podcast went. Shyne was the newcomer, the rookie who did not know the field was already occupied. The mutual friend who served as information relay between both men eventually exposed the overlap. Brandy called Shyne, lit into him for telling people they were together, and in doing so, apparently revealed that she understood perfectly well that they were something more than platonic friends. Because you do not call someone furious about telling people they are with you if there is no they're there.
What happened with Brandy and everything?
If you look at the interview, Mace has different opinions. Like, he's very hard line, he's very extreme. I'm a bit more compassionate, a bit, middle ground. So Mace and I weren't agreeing on everything.
Right.
She's lying. Everything that I said is 100% true.
Shyne's description of what she said in that phone call is the detail that carries the most weight in this whole story. She told him he was nobody, that he had not sold a record, that she was Brandy, that he needed to understand who he was dealing with. And he says that humiliation, that specific moment of being talked down to by someone he had admired and wanted to be close to, was the fuel that built his first album, that it gave him the hand of God, as he put it. That is a real and recognizable creative dynamic. Being dismissed by someone you loved or wanted to be with has produced more art than almost any other human experience. The specific cruelty of being told you are nobody by someone who knows exactly who you are is the kind of thing that either breaks you or channels into something. For Shyne, it apparently channeled.
So excited because this is my dream person.
Right. Talk about Brandy.
Brandy.
Right.
So I kept telling one of our mutual friends, and he was snitching me out. And then so Brandy was like, yo, who you told you here?
Right.
How so-and-so know that you here with me right now? And I'm like, oh, man.
Right.
So yeah.
For Brandy, the version of this story she had been comfortable with for decades was apparently the version where none of this ever happened. The problem with that version is that it requires both Mase and Shyne to be lying. It requires their shared memory of the situation, confirmed by people who were present in those circles at the time, to be a fabrication. It requires the mutual friend who served as the go-between for information to have invented his role. And it requires the phone call that Shyne describes, the one where Brandy was angry enough about the disclosure to call him and confront him about who he had been talking to have never taken place. That is a lot of fabrication to account for, especially when the person denying it has an established pattern of shaping the story about her life for public consumption. None of this is to say that Brandy owed the public a detailed accounting of her romantic life in the 90s. She did not. She was a young woman navigating an industry that demanded a specific presentation from her and making choices about who she dated, about how much she disclosed, about how she protected herself and the people around her that were entirely her own to make. The expectation that she should have been publicly honest about her love life while maintaining the career she was trying to build is an expectation that was never going to be fully met by anyone in her position. But there is a difference between privacy and denial. Privacy is not commenting on your relationship status. Denial is posting a statement saying the relationship never existed when the people who were inside that situation remember it differently and are on record saying so. Ray J entering this conversation was the moment everything escalated beyond where it needed to go. His social media response to Mase and Shyne was exactly the kind of thing that makes a situation worse rather than better. Aggressive, unnecessary, and ultimately counterproductive for the person he was ostensibly defending. He went after all three men involved with language that was vivid enough to be clipped and shared everywhere and substantive enough to invite the kind of response it received. Shyne responded by posting a photo of himself with Brandy and Ray J together, captioning it to note that he did not, quote, hit it first. a direct reference to Ray J's own famous song about Kim Kardashian. That single caption move managed to simultaneously remind the internet of Ray J's most culturally complicated moment, undermine his authority to be lecturing anyone about women's dignity, and visually establish that Shyne and Brandy had a documented history together. One image, one caption, layers of damage. Mace's response added the footage of Ray J in a separate physical altercation, essentially asking why the man who cannot apparently handle his own conflicts is out here threatening other people on behalf of his sister. The point was made without mercy. And then Brandy posted the addendum to her original statement that may be the most significant development in this entire story. She said she does not condone or support what her brother shared on social media, that she did not ask him to defend her, that she handles things on her own. She effectively publicly separated herself from Ray J's defense of her in the middle of a dispute he had made significantly worse. That is a remarkable thing to do. To publicly distance yourself from your own brother's defense of you while the situation is still hot and the internet is watching. It says something specific about how seriously Brandy takes the management of her image and how little she trusted that Ray J's approach was serving that management. She would rather stand alone in the controversy than be associated with how he chose to fight in it. What the full situation reveals about Brandy is not that she was a bad person for dating two men simultaneously as a young woman in the music industry. She was not. What it reveals is the specific cost of building an identity around an image that requires concealment, the way that image eventually becomes its own kind of trap. Because once you have taught the public to see you as a certain kind of person, any information that disrupts that perception becomes a threat to be managed rather than a truth to be absorbed. The Oprah lie was the most documented version of this dynamic. The marriage that was not a marriage. The baby outside of wedlock that had to be wrapped in the fiction of respectability to protect the brand. She went back to Oprah and explained it. She talked about the pressure, the shame, the fear that the image she had worked for would collapse under the weight of an honest life. That explanation was honest, and it was humanizing, and it made Brandy more real rather than less. The same thing would have been true about her romantic life in the 90s if she had chosen to simply say those were complicated times, I was young, I was navigating my career, I do not owe anyone a full accounting of who I dated. That is a complete and defensible position. What is not defensible, or at least what the internet is declining to let stand, is the active denial. The platonic friendship that was not a platonic friendship. The statement that everyone involved in the situation contradicts. The memoir she is promoting, the one she mentioned in her original response and expanded on in the addendum, is apparently going to contain her version of this story and others. She says it is time to tell her truth and debunk the misnomers people think they know about her life. That is a significant promise. Because if she is going to tell her truth about the 90s and about these relationships, the question of how that truth squares with the denial she has just posted is a question the memoir is going to have to answer. Shyne and Mase are not going away from this story. They have too much invested in their own credibility now that Brandy's denial has put them in the position of being labeled liars. Shyne, in particular, has made clear across multiple interviews that he will keep talking about this as long as the denial stands. He has a documentary in which this period of his life is discussed. He has the album that the story of Brandy and that phone call allegedly inspired. He has Mase corroborating his account and mutual contemporaries who remember the situation the same way. And Ray J, who created additional chaos in service of defending his sister and received a public rebuke from that sister for his trouble, is somewhere processing the specific indignity of going to war for someone who then told the world she did not ask him to. The 90s were a long time ago. The people involved are all in different chapters of their lives. Brandy is still one of the greatest voices in R&B history, regardless of who she dated in 1998. None of what Shyne and Mase revealed changes the music or the cultural significance of Moesha or the specific place she occupies in the memory of everyone who grew up in that era. But images have consequences, and the specific image that Brandy built, the one that required the Oprah lie, the one that apparently requires the denial of a relationship that multiple people remember, has a cost that surfaces whenever someone from those years decides they have a story to tell that does not fit the version she has been maintaining. The bad boy context matters more than the podcast conversation alone captures, because in the late 90s, Bad Boy Records was not just a label. It was a world, an ecosystem of ambition and money and talent and proximity that produced relationships of all kinds between people who were all simultaneously famous enough to be interesting to each other and young enough to be reckless about it. Mase was at the center of that world at its peak. He was the face, the voice, the figure that everyone else was measuring themselves against. Shyne was the newcomer who looked at that world and saw everything he had been watching from Brooklyn on his television set and decided he was going to be part of it. And Brandy was everywhere. She was Moesha, She was on the radio. She was the kind of figure that the entire culture was organized around in a specific way that only happens to a small number of artists in any era. Being with Brandy in 1998 was not just dating someone famous, it was being at the center of the center, which is why both Mase and Shyne are still talking about it decades later. Not because they are trying to embarrass her, but because the experience of being in her orbit during that period was genuinely formative for both of them, and the specific way it ended left marks that apparently have not fully faded. Shyne's account of what she said to him on that phone call is the most vivid piece of all of this. "You are nobody. You have not sold a record. I am Brandy," the specific hierarchy she was invoking in that moment. The one that placed her so far above him that his feelings about the situation were not worth considering. Was an honest expression of where she understood herself to be in the food chain of that world. She was Brandy. He was a newcomer who had gotten too comfortable and needed to understand his place. That honesty, as brutal as it was, is actually more interesting than the denial she is currently offering. Because the Brandy who told Shyne he was nobody was a Brandy operating from a position of genuine confidence in her own power. The Brandy who posted a statement saying she and Shyne had a platonic friendship is a Brandy operating from a position of image protection. The second version is less honest and less interesting than the first. The irony that the phone call Shyne describes eventually gave him the fuel to build a career is the kind of thing that only makes sense in retrospect. She dismissed him in that moment, and the dismissal became the engine. He is out here now, decades later, telling that story not because it makes Brandy look bad, but because it explains something real about where his own hunger came from. The girl who told him he was nobody is part of why he went out and became somebody. That is a complicated debt to sit with, and apparently complicated enough that when Brandy denied the relationship existed entirely, he was not willing to let that version stand. The memoir is the piece of all of this that carries the most potential to resolve or deepen the situation. Brandy has promised to tell her truth. She has framed it as an opportunity to debunk the misnomers. If that memoir engages honestly with this period of her life, with the relationships she had and the decisions she made and the image she was protecting, it has the potential to be the most genuinely revealing thing she has ever put on record. She is a woman with a genuinely complicated and genuinely interesting life. The version of it that has been publicly available is the managed version. The full version sounds like it would be worth reading, but the terms of that telling matter. If the memoir's version of the 90s produces another denial of what Shyne and Mase have described, if it offers the platonic friendship narrative in book form while both of them continue to contradict it publicly, it is not going to close the conversation. It is going to keep it open and add Brandy's own documentation of the discrepancy to the record. Ray J's involvement has become its own story within the story, because the specific way he chose to defend his sister, the threats, the sexual language, the aggression that was immediately and widely circulated, was not the defense of someone who was thinking about what his sister actually needed. It was the defense of someone who was angry and reached for the most extreme available response without considering what the extreme response would cost. And then his sister told the world publicly that she had not asked for it and did not endorse it. That public distancing is something. It says that Brandy understands the difference between being defended and being helped, that the thing Ray J did in her name made her situation harder rather than easier, and that she was willing to say so publicly even in the middle of a controversy that had her already on the defensive. That decision reflects a specific kind of self-possession, the willingness to manage your own crisis according to your own standards, rather than accepting whatever assistance arrives in your direction regardless of the cost to your relationships. The internet has been processing this situation with the specific energy of something that has touched multiple live wires simultaneously. There is the generational nostalgia dimension. Brandy is a figure from an era that people have strong feelings about. There is the image versus reality dimension, the specific collision between the public persona and the private life. There is the credibility dimension, the Oprah lie sitting in the historical record as documentation of a pattern. And there is the Ray J dimension, which is its own separate universe of complications that trails behind everything his name appears in. What it all adds up to is a story about what happens when the image you build in your 20s to survive an industry that requires a specific kind of performance from you follows you into your 40s and becomes the thing you have to keep defending rather than the thing you have outgrown. Brandy's image was not a lie exactly. It was an emphasis, a selection of truths that served the brand while the rest of the truths were kept private. That is not unusual in the entertainment industry. It is, in fact, the standard operating procedure. The complication arrives when the people who were present for the private truths decide to speak. And both Mase and Shyne have decided to speak, not with malice, based on their own accounts, but with the specific freedom of people who are no longer operating inside the image management logic that Brandy has been living inside for 3 decades. They were young men, in a specific world at a specific moment, and they remember what they remember, and they do not feel obligated to stay quiet about it because her brand requires them to. So here is where this sits. Shyne and Mase went on a podcast and told a story about overlapping with Brandy in the 90s that Brandy has denied was a romantic situation. Both men have consistent accounts. The phone call Shyne describes, Brandy telling him he was nobody, that she was Brandy, is the kind of detail that does not get invented. Brandy posted a denial and promoted her memoir in the same breath. Ray J defended her in the most counterproductive way possible and received a public disavowal from his own sister for the effort. And Shyne has now brought up the Oprah marriage lie as evidence that Brandy's image management has a documented history of overriding her honesty. Do you think Brandy's denial holds up given that both Mase and Shyne are telling the same story with the same details? Or do you think this is two men misremembering or mischaracterizing something that was less significant than they are making it seem? And does the Oprah marriage situation change how you weigh her credibility here? Drop everything in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe, because the memoir is coming. And if Brandy decides to actually tell her full truth in it, this story is going to look very different from the version currently in public circulation.